Hello. Here we're going to be talking about the digestive functions of the oral cavity, which is the first compartment of the digestive system. Listed here are several of the functions of the oral cavity. Most of them will have to do with the fact that there is going to be the production of saliva inside of the oral cavity. First, let's talk about food ingestion, which basically just means that once food enters into the oral cavity, you will have the ingestion of food. In addition, we have already talked about this earlier. Then the teeth will help with chewing, and the tongue will help with mixing of the food. There is going to be the secretion of salivary amylase that will help with the chemical breakdown of carbohydrates. Then once the food gets pushed down into the pharynx, this happens with the help of the tongue, and this is a voluntary movement. Also, your tongue will release the lingual lipase, which will help with the breakdown of lipids. With regards to other functions, we have that saliva will help to moisten and dissolve the food. It will also help to clean and lubricate the teeth and oral cavity. And because it has certain components, it will help to reduce bacteria inside of the mouth. And we will talk about the components of saliva in a couple of slides. Like I said, the oral cavity is important because that's where ingestion starts. But really, the accessory organs are what going to be important to help with a lot of the digestion process that occurs inside of the oral cavity. Starting with the lips and the cheeks, we can say that the action will be to confine the food between the teeth. With regards to outcome, we can say that the food will be chewed evenly during mastication. And it's important to chew your food well enough because the longer you chew your food, the more your food gets broken down and the better it is for digestion. The teeth will help to shred and crush the food, and this will help with the breakdown of the solid food into smaller particles, which will be important for swallowing. Tongue muscles, we have two types of tongue muscles. We have what we call the extrinsic muscles and the intrinsic muscles. The extrinsic muscles will be important because they will move the tongue sideways and in and out. And this will help to manipulate the food for chewing. It will also be important to shape the food into a bolus. While the intrinsic tongue muscles are going to be important because they will change the tongue shape, and this will facilitate the swallowing process. Now, the taste buds are going to be important because they will sense the food in the mouth and also the taste, which are going to be important for stimulating saliva secretion. Then we have lingual glands, like the name says. They're going to be present on the tongue, and they're going to secrete the lingual lipase, which will be activated actually in the stomach, and it's going to be important for the breakdown of triglycerides into fatty acids and diglycerides. And lastly, we have the salivary glands. There are three types of salivary glands. We have what we call the sublingual salivary gland, the parotid salivary gland, and the submandibular salivary gland. The sublingual salivary gland is under the tongue. The submandibular salivary gland is under the mandible. And the parotid salivary gland is over here on your cheek. And all of them are going to secrete saliva. There are different substances of saliva that they secrete, but the function of the saliva is to moisten and lubricate the lining of the mouth and the pharynx. And it also functions to moisten and soften the food, in addition to cleaning the mouth and the teeth. In addition, the salivary amylase that's secreted by the salivary glands will start to break down starch. So again, another reason why it's important for you to chew well your food before swallowing, because a lot of the digestion already starts in the oral cavity. So like I said, two important digestive properties are the lingual lipase and the saliva. The lingual lipase is going to be secreted by the lingual glands. Like I said, it's going to be activated first in the stomach, and it will have an important function in the breakdown of triglycerides. Now, the saliva is essentially made up of water. So 99.4% of the saliva is in fact water. And the remaining 0.6% is going to be this complex mixture of ions, glycoproteins, enzymes, growth factors, and waste products. And perhaps the most important ingredient in saliva from the perspective of the digestion process is the enzyme salivary amylase, which will be important for the initiation of the breakdown of carbohydrates. So food does not spend enough time in the mouth to allow all the carbohydrates to break down, but the salivary amylase will continue acting until it is going to be inactivated by the stomach acids. So still when it's going down the pharynx and the esophagus, the salivary amylase is still acting on the digestion of carbohydrates. Now, bicarbonate and phosphate ions, they will function as chemical buffers, maintaining the pH of the saliva between 6.35 and 6.85. In addition, there's going to be the salivary mucus that will help to lubricate food, and this is important because it will facilitate the movement in the mouth. It will also facilitate the bolus formation and also help with swallowing. In addition, saliva contains immunoglobulin A, which we know it prevents microbes from penetrating the epithelium. In addition, it has lysosomes, which makes the saliva an antimicrobial. So they function like a barrier against pathogens entering into our body. And even though there has been detected the presence of growth factors in saliva, the physiological role still remains unclear.